Hi everyone, Mark Merrill with a special edition of Firm, our journal called Title IX. No gender rights. That's for sure. We welcome all of you who are tuning in to Firm on a regular basis. The state and status of our people here in Maine and the way life and society used to be is in a quagmire. Well, thanks to this guy or his boss, Janet Mills. Between the federal government and said Governor Mills and Speaker Ryan Fecteau here, after the recent censure of House Representative Laurel Libby of Auburn. Well, first, here's a brief exchange at the end of Laurel's conversation with radio host Howie Carr recently about her latest actions that she will have to be taking to challenge the denial of her free speech out of state.
Is there any more people stepping forward and saying that you should run for governor next year? Are you moving towards some kind of statewide race, probably governor?
I've been hearing that question a lot, Howie, and I'm not ruling anything out. But my priority right now has to be, of course, getting my constituents' voice and vote back, and also ensuring that Maine girls have a fair and level playing field. We are in quite a state up here in Maine, and it's unfortunate that we're getting the reputation that we are, because it really is a wonderful state. But there are some big decisions to make for next year, Howie, and I am considering all options at this point.
Now, I think I read that the University of Maine has lost $29 million in grants already from the Department of Agriculture. Is that correct?
That's what we heard yesterday. But, Howie, I'm hearing the news today that has been reinstated. So I'm not sure that is official at this point. What is very clear, however, is that President Trump and his administration are taking this very seriously and are going to do whatever it takes to ensure that Maine girls have a fair and level playing field. And I applaud that, because it seems pretty clear to me that we're not going to get that result here in Maine from the Democrat majority, and certainly not from Governor Mills. And so I think it's going to require President Trump to keep putting their feet to the fire and, yes, pulling funding if that's what it requires for the folks in our state who can reverse this policy to do so.
Any contact with Senator Susan Collins, who is, of course, a Republican, at least in name only, and Jared Golden, a Democrat in the 2nd District, who he was the one Democrat who voted with the Republicans on the continuing resolution in the House, which passed so narrowly. Have you heard from any of the people in the congressional delegation?
I've heard from a representative of Senator Collins, but other than that, I've heard really from more folks from outside of the state than in. I was just realizing today I've heard from, I think, 3 state senators from Montana with words of encouragement, but certainly not our state congressional delegation, other than Senator Collins.
Sad.
So you've heard from more legislators from Montana than from Maine, or at least from Democrat legislators.
Mm-hmm.
That's something. So when is your case going to be heard in Providence in federal court?
The defendants have 21 days from Tuesday, when they got served, to respond, and so we'll be working within that timeline. If they respond sooner, we'll be able to move things forward sooner. But I would anticipate they'll probably use all of that time scrambling to figure out what they're going to say to attempt to keep free speech repressed here in Maine.
So is the legislature in session in Augusta or not?
We are in session. We were in session on Tuesday, and we'll be back in session next week. The Senate met today regarding the debacle of a supplemental budget we're currently handling. But the House is not in session today.
So how many votes have you missed? How many votes have your constituents not been represented in?
I think at last count we were at 5 roll call votes. Most of those were on the supplemental budget on Tuesday. But one of them, Howie, was a joint resolution honoring women and celebrating International Women's Day. Of of course, I couldn't vote or speak to that. I sat in my seat and didn't speak, but a colleague of mine did speak on my behalf.
And I'm sure all the Democrats who voted to silence you voted for recognizing International Women's Day, right?
Oh, absolutely. They're all about women's rights when it's a joint resolution that doesn't require upholding the First Amendment.
So where can people go if they want to read up on your political struggles right now and what you're up to and your legal case? Where can they go to find out more information?
I am on X, and I'm also on Facebook, and they can check out my website, laurellibby.com. Things are changing every day, so that's the best way to stay up to date.
All right, Laurel, we're behind you 100%, and so is the vast majority of the United States population. And this is just, it's really an injustice that they're doing this to you. While the same party defends a guy who was a pro-terrorist non-citizen. And they defend him and they get arrested for him, but they want to silence you, an American citizen, a taxpayer, a mother of, I believe, 5, right?
Absolutely. Well, nobody ever said they weren't hypocritical, Howie.
If it weren't for double standards, they would have no standards at all. An old saying, but it applies in this case. Representative Laurel Libby of Auburn, keep us informed about what's going on, and we'll be in touch. And, we wish you the best. And I'm sorry for your constituents as well who are being deprived of representation.
That was the exchange with Howie Carr. Now, next up, folks, we're going to switch gears a little bit with yours truly, who was in Augusta recently at the state capitol. Felt like we had to at least get down there and make our presence known a little bit. Weren't many people to talk to at the present time. A lot were in work sessions, and as Laurel Libby, you heard her say, they are in session at the state capitol. But this is a brief rundown that we recorded down there right inside the State House, just down the hall from where the work sessions are taking place. And some information that you may not already know from my visit down there. See what you have to think about that. We do, as always, folks, value your input and your comments and contacting us this way at fairnessinreportingmedia@gmail.com, fairnessinreportingmedia@gmail.com. And we will provide that again at the end of today's program. But here's a segment of what we found out down there in Augusta.
March 14th, 2025, Mark Merrill for Firm. Going to Augusta today to promote and support Laurel Libby in her quest to get her rights back and abolish the censure against her as she pursues this in the federal courts.
The Maine House Republicans, in light of the censure of Representative Laurel Libby, held a press conference on March 6th, a few days ago, asking Governor Mills to comply with Title IX to protect our girls and federal funds to support all Maine students. And this was set up by Representative John Bob. The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services issued a notice of violation against the Maine Department of Education for violating Title IX. Title IX, of course, is the federal law that prohibits sex-based discrimination in education programs and activities, including girls' sports, ensuring equal opportunities for women and girls in athletics. Since it was enacted in 1972, that means female participation in sports has increased significantly at the high school and college levels. The letter also highlights that since 2024, the Maine Department of Education received $703,000 from the United States DHHS. It goes on to state that because Maine is allowing male athletes to compete against female athletes, the Maine Department of Education is violating Title IX because it's denying female students an equal opportunity to participate in athletics.
According to House Republican leader Billy Bob Buckingham, it's a matter of scientific fact that biological males have a physical advantage over biological females. The Mills administration policy of allowing biological boys in girls' sports has physically and mentally mistreated our young ladies, and now is the same policy will harm every child and teacher with the loss of federal funds to our schools, said Assistant House Republican leader Katrina Smith. In the letter itself, folks, from President Trump's Office for Civil Rights, the Maine Principals Association, in a finding of facts, is the governing body for youth sports in the state of Maine, and it's open to elementary, middle, junior high school, and high school principals, assistant principals, technical education center directors, assistant directors, and other administrators who functions primarily as building principals or assistant principals. That's the short of it, ladies and gentlemen. This is a special version of FIRM, Fairness in Reporting Media.
That's what we had to briefly report there, folks. We have a little bit more on that report and some additional information that we'll provide in another podcast coming up soon. Now, next up, folks, before we finish this program, in regard to Title IX, where there's no gender rights, the difference between sex and gender, folks, is what we have here next. Sex refers to biological traits like chromosomes, hormones, and reproductive organs, typically categorized as male and female, biologically speaking. What about that doesn't anybody understand? I don't get it. It's crazy. As for the rest of it, folks, we'll tell you that gender, here it is, sex refers to biological traits, chromosomes, hormones, and reproductive organs, male and female. Gender is a social construct encompassing roles, behaviors, expressions, feelings, and emotions. In a nutshell, folks. And identities. I identify as a horse. Which can vary and are not limited to a binary. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and there's more detailed breakdown. Biological. Sex is primarily determined by biological factors like chromosomes, XX for female, XY for male. How many times do we have to get blue in the face to these people about this? LGBTQ, you are next, and you're going down the drain, and you're going down hard. It's not going to be me, folks. It's not going to be just one person. It's going to be the whole 77 million, if not half the country, is coming after you and making sure you go back in the closet you came from. That's a promise. And it's a promise from God. Binary says, while there's variation in biological attributes, sex is often assigned as either male or female at birth. As for gender, here's the difference. It refers to the socially constructed roles, as we just mentioned, which are not solely based on biology. Not on biology. Beyond binary, it says, gender identity is not limited to a male-female and can exist along a spectrum, including transgender. There's part of the problem right there. Gender nonconforming and gender queer identities. Gender roles, expectations about how people should act based on their perceived gender and self-identification. See? Selfish is more like it. with a particular gender identity or all aspects of gender. Gender identity versus gender expression. Gender identity is an individual's internal sense of being male, female, or a gender along the spectrum. Oh my gosh, here we go, the spectrum. While gender expression is how someone outwardly presents their gender. We will give you and show you and post at the end of our program, folks, this site. It is medicine.yale.edu/news-article. That's where it is. Pretty much, folks, that's where it's going to end soon. A couple of more things, folks. Title 5, Chapter 337 is what the law, in Maine anyway, is for the Maine Human Rights Act. But here's what we found. Under the subtitle of Definitions, Part 12, Human Rights, subsection 4553, paragraph 5C, says clearly, gender identity means the gender-related identity, appearance, mannerisms, or other gender-related characteristics of an individual, regardless of the individual's assigned sex at birth. Regardless. They don't pay attention to it. Or at least that's what the Human Rights Act for the state of Maine says. Title 9, folks, only prevents discrimination of sexual orientation or biological sex, as we just went over, which is assigned at birth by a gynecologist, female or male baby doctor. Getting that pretty clear there? Finally, folks, we had an encounter by email. This is what it's come down to, folks, with trying to get an interview with the left. We're not giving up here at Firm. Haven't yet. Don't plan to. Miss Victoria Foley is the secretary to House Speaker Ryan Fecteau at the State House. Spoke with her in person once. He wasn't available. Of course not. She claims to have gotten him on the phone while he was at lunch. This is about a week and a half ago. We physically go down to the State House all the time, folks. We're not that far away from it here at Firm. And even if they were in Bangor, we'd still make the trip. Hello, Victoria, I said in my first email after talking with her. I'm an independent journalist from Waterville requesting a short interview with the speaker. Is he available any time, morning or afternoon? I'm asking specific questions about the ongoing issues of the censure of GOP Representative Laurel Libby and the situation with Governor Mills and the Maine Principals Association regarding Title IX laws, in U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi's investigation of Maine government's stance on their Human Rights Commission laws violating Title IX. Thanks for your help. No answer. 6 days later, I had to initiate the email message. Hello again, Victoria. I need to have a one-on-one interview with Speaker Fecteau before the end of the week. Can we schedule a time outside his office? If not, what about by phone? Thanks very much. Signed, myself. Another 5 days goes by. Just put a short note to this one, folks. To Victoria Foley. Any chance of speaking to Mr. Fecteau this week? Mark Merrill, owner of Firm, Fairness and Reporting Media. And then another 4 days goes by, folks. To Victoria Foley. Guess you aren't working this week, Miss Foley? Question mark. I'm going to keep asking you politely for a few minutes interview with Mr. Fecteau. If not, we here at Firm, Fairness in Reporting Media, will issue and serve him our own subpoena for ignoring the Maine free press that I fall under and many others do in this state under the Bill of Rights and the U.S. Constitution, not just the Maine Constitution. Sincerely, Mark Merrill, firm. That's where we are, folks. That's what it comes down to. They don't like us if we're not on their side and don't speak their jargon or their narratives or believe in their ideologies. Gee, that's too bad. We welcome your input and your views, as well as suggestions for any topics that you'd like to hear, or any questions that you'd like to pose that maybe some of which we have not thought of. Mark Merrill, once again, for Firm, Fairness in Reporting Media. You can get our podcasts all the time, over 320 of them now, rumble.com/fairnessmedia1. As we said previously, please contact us at your convenience. Anytime, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at fairnessinreportingmedia@gmail.com, fairnessinreportingmedia@gmail.com. Everybody stay safe and peace to everyone.